Welcome, everybody. That was a game. Oh, hold on. Let's create a banner for this one. Here we go. That is how we're feeling here. All right, we'll give people a couple seconds.
Maybe you should add, but a dub is a dub after that statement. I don't know.
We'll save it. Let's just give people. I see we have some people already joined. We'll give a little bit more time. I just tweeted it out. Man, that was something. That was game football that was played.
I could say that again. Okay, the box score is not coming up on Penn State's site. Just pull up ESPN or something.
All right, we'll give people another minute to join, and then we'll get started talking about this game. Oh, man. It can never be easy. Can never be easy. All right. Let's go. All right. Let's get into it. So Penn State escapes Bowling Green. They win 34-17.
27.
34-27. Sorry. My brain
I would love it was 34-17.
Yeah, my brain is...
You probably wouldn't be saying it sucked then.
Yeah, I guess not as bad, but so Penn State escapes 34-27. At one point in the game, they were down 17-7, trailed for most of the first half and didn't get the lead until the second
entire
half.
First half, yeah.
Yeah, entire first half. They either were tied, obviously at 0-0, or trailed. Really a tale of two halves for Penn State on both sides of the ball. Obviously, in the first half, the offense put up 20 points and looked certainly pretty good. I mean, they had their shortcomings as well, but Drew was moving the ball. They were able to run the ball well with both Singleton and Allen. And defensively, they could not get any stops whatsoever. And then in the second half, Bowling Green went up 24-20 in halftime. Second half, complete role reversal. Penn State's offense, kind of got stuck in the mud a little bit, maybe went a little conservative once they were able to take the lead. Drew had an interception, his first of the year, tried to I'm not really sure what happened with that throw, tried to force it in the end zone, but the Penn State defense looked at least a little bit better in the second half. They only gave up that field goal in the fourth quarter with under a minute to go at that point. Otherwise, a strong second half performance. And man, that is not what we expected. I'm just going on. So Tim, let's try to make sense of all this. This is going to be much different than the West Virginia game where we had so much good to talk about. Everything was sunshine and candy and all the good things in the world, and this game certainly was not. So try to make sense of this for me. What are your takeaways from this game?
Well, Pat, I'm pacing a half marathon tomorrow morning, and I told myself I wasn't going to drink, but god dang, after that performance, don't worry, it's not alcoholic actually, but I needed a beer. So
we're going to
here. But just to get to your point, yeah, it was tale of two halves. I don't know about you, but I had visions of John Butler on the sidelines in that first half with how the defense was getting absolutely shredded. Like, I had not seen such a god-awful half of defense in such a long time. And which is weird because, you're used to the offense maybe getting off to slow starts in these kinds of games, but they actually were keeping Penn State's from being like 2 or 3 scores down early because they were able to move the ball and put up points. Although they did, the last couple of drives where they did kind of sputter towards the red zone and have to settle for field goals when they maybe could have had some touchdowns. But it was, I don't know, offensively, I mean, there's still, not that I'm saying offense was flawless. There were some issues there too. Not quite as glaring as on the defense though. I mean, where do I begin? I mean, D-line was getting manhandled early on. Not much pass rush. Tackling was poor. Coverage was poor. I mean, they were just getting absolutely shredded. And, I don't want to take away from Bowling Green. I mean, we kind of talked about it on the previous show on Wednesday. They do have a couple dudes on their squad, especially
Crazy enough, though, one of the guys we talked about, running back Terrion Stewart, was out the entire game. Yeah, didn't even play. So
they still ripped up. One of their backups, Jamal Johnson, ripped off a 41-yard touchdown run in the first half, which was mind-blowing. They, to the defense credit, they did bottle up the run game in the second half, which I think kind of helped because then they were able to really kind of pin their ears back a bit and play the pass. And it seemed like in the second half that Tom Allen started dialing up some more blitzes, especially from the safeties, to get some pressure on Connor Bazelak. I didn't think about this, Pat, but Connor Bazelak played at Indiana for a year or two while Tom Allen was there. I have to wonder if maybe that gave him a little bit of an advantage when it came to knowing how to, pick apart one of his defenses.
But the truth can be said the other way, right? And I think that's something that we didn't necessarily touch on, but you would think that in a matchup, in the college game especially, of let's be honest, Bazelak is at best an average, probably slightly below average if he was at Missouri and Indiana and had to drop down to Bowling Green. College quarterback, you would give the advantage to the coach in that scenario, you would think. So
yeah, it does go both ways. You're right. Just a thought. But credit to Tom Allen. They made adjustments at halftime. They were able to get a little more pressure on Bazelak, not allow him to get comfortable, get into a rhythm. And the offense, they didn't quite look as good in the second half. At least not, fourth quarter, they picked it up a bit more. I'm thinking, of course, about Singleton's touchdown run, which effectively iced the game, or at least made it a 10-point game and really put Bowling Green in a bind where they had to score and then get an onside kick and then hope they could score again to potentially win or force overtime. But offense kind of had some issues in the second half as well. It became abundantly clear that, if they were going to get something going in the passing game, it was going to have to be for Tyler Warren, especially, who caught, 8 catches, 146 yards. That's a Penn State record, apparently, for reception yards in a game for a tight end. So congrats, Tyler. The rest of the receiving core,
nothing from Trey Wallace.
Only two, which is mind blowing. Like, Trey Wallace got shut out.
Yeah, 1 week after we sing his praises.
He did catch a touchdown grab, a 29-yarder from Drew Aller early on, and probably
he also had
an offensive pass interference on what should have been another touchdown for him.
Dropped the first down on 3rd and 17 in the first quarter as well.
So he was a mixed bag. And then Julian Fleming had his first career catch to the Nittany line. One went for 3 yards, but congrats to Julian on doing that. But otherwise, just 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown from the wide receivers. Once again, it's Tyler Warren carrying the team and receiving. And, shout out to Nick Singleton. He did catch a touchdown pass from Drew as well. So, they are getting the running backs involved in the pass game too. You kind of have to when your receivers are struggling to get open so frequently.
It is just a weird game where you look at the box score, and this is kind of similar to what we were talking about with Oregon and Idaho last week, where you look at the box score and you would think that Oregon would have won by a lot more. Nick Singleton, 13 carries for 119 yards, 9.2 yards per carry. Katron Allen, 14 carries for 101 yards, 7.2 yards per carry. It's pretty crazy to think that both Singleton and Allen get over 10 carries. They both average, like I said, 9 yards and 7 yards a pop, and Penn State only wins by a touchdown and is trailing for a good majority of the game and was a nerve-wracking game the entire time. It's kind of taking a step back here because we started off with saying that offense really good in the first half, defense really good in the second half. The offense certainly, I think, had a better second half than the defense had first half because and you kind of mentioned this with like Amari Evans, that he has that touchdown taken away which was, a fair pass interference call. I mean, he definitely pushed.
Yeah, I couldn't really complain about that. He did push off the guy's helmet that time, and it wasn't like last week against West Virginia where you could argue it could have been a defensive pass interference call because him and the West Virginia corner were having a little hand-to-hand combat there. But this one was a little more really OPI.
But Penn State certainly had their chances in the second half, right? Like that play right there where
also, I didn't mention Evans. Not to interrupt, but I was about to mention Trey Wallace could have had a potential touchdown grab late in the game, deep touchdown catch. I think Drew maybe didn't put enough juice in it. If he put a little further, he could have just kept running in stride and caught it in the end zone. But it was like slow enough that the Jordan Oladokin, the Bowling Green corner, was able to make a play on it.
Get his hand in there. But no, that's what I'm saying, that you had that throw to Evans that definitely could have been a touchdown. You had that throw to Trey Wallace, which definitely could have been a touchdown. You obviously
the interception in the red zone.
The interception.
When they should have probably iced it there,
Yeah, they didn't look as, I think it's fair to say that the defense looked pathetic in the first half. I wouldn't say the offense looked pathetic in the second half. They just weren't able to convert in the scenarios where they needed to necessarily, or I shouldn't say needed to, but would have liked to. It's still, man, just a terrible, terrible game. Tim, I don't know if you saw my tweet earlier this week. I made a joke about the Florida State fan who said that he was going to eat doggy poo-poo if they lost to Boston College. And I said that I would eat doggy poo-poo if Penn State lost to Bowling Green. And I said it.
Saw that tweet.
Yeah, kind of in jest. And it certainly wasn't planning on, never thought in my wildest dreams that this would be a game where I spent the entire game basically thinking about how am I going to eat dog poo, or how am I going to get out of eating dog poo? I was like, can I eat something else? Maybe I donate somewhere? Do I leave the internet like the Florida State fan did? A weird game. Like I'm sure it was a weird game for everybody, but for myself, and not to make about me, but I was a lot of poo on my mind during that game, which is a first for me in Penn State football.
I hope you don't make a similar declaration for Kent State in a couple weeks.
I saw Kent State was down 10-0 at St. Francis, or against St. Francis rather. So I don't know. I mean, I obviously didn't like going through this game thinking about poop, but now is that just like my thing? Do I really just like go into it, and do I make another? I mean, we have a bye week, so I will take this week and think about it, but maybe I'd toss another poo tweet for Kent State. I won't do it for Big Ten games. It's playing with too much fire, but just want to say that game was so bad that I feel like in the spirit of the tweet, I might still have to eat poo. I'm not going to, but that's kind of my takeaway, is that it was, when you think about, let's put our thinking caps on, Tim, and you're a Penn State historian probably even more than myself, considering I don't want to call you old, but a little bit older than me. When we think about non-satisfying Penn State wins, this is up there. Like, as far as expectations go, and how good we all felt last week after West Virginia. And when I say we, I mean Penn State fans, but even the media just in general. I think everybody was higher on Penn State. Where does this rank in the non-satisfying category, given the expectations? Obviously, there have been a lot of disgusting gross. Like, I can think back to what Franklin's, I think it was his first year against Army, and it was like a 21-14 game or something like that. But given Penn State's expectations,
I forgot about that one. But that's a good one. But
yeah,
the difference is this game, the offense actually was moving the ball, putting up some points. The real problem was the defense, especially in the first half. I mean, I was having flashbacks, Frank. I think I told you before you hit record. I was having flashbacks to 2013 when Bill O'Brien's second season, John Butler had been promoted to defensive coordinator, having never held such a job at the FBS level. And I just remember, that whole season, just the defense constantly getting shredded. And so I'm thinking back to the UCF game that year when they. Blake Bortles just
that ended up being a good UCF team, though.
Johnson running all over them, losing that game, and upset. And then so I was thinking about that, and so the games where our defense just like other. I think as far as like unsatisfying wins, though,
Last year, Indiana.
yeah,
I
so
think
that was
that's
my mind went last against Indiana. Maybe the game against Northwestern 2 years ago in the rain, although that was just
Oh
more of
yeah.
like flop, but it was kind of one of those games where it's like, I know we weren't trailing as North, but it's like, you're keeping them in the game with these fumbles and not being able to put them away. Like they're just one big play away from making things interesting. And it was the same kind of feeling with Bowling Green, like they're like when it was stuck at 27-24 for a while, especially the interception, I'm thinking, well, geez, I mean, we're just a busted coverage or, one bad play from Bowling Green reclaiming the lead here. And
some
really,
tough penalties for Penn State as well. Like when we talk about or think about what are the reasons for this game playing out the way it did. Penn State had 7 penalties for 76 yards, and say what you want about James Franklin, but one of the things that they have been consistently good at during his tenure is not committing those stupid penalties and usually winning the penalty battle, and they did not today. Bowling Green only had 3 penalties for 18 yards. I think if we had to pick one thing that worries you the most out of this game, I mean, I imagine for most people it would largely be the defense. I think. Well, I'm
which
greatly
part,
I'm greatly concerned about the defensive line. Penn State can get no pressure when rushing 4 guys, and it is quite upsetting and maddening that you have Abdul Carter and Denai Sutton and Amin Vanover and Smith Bilber and Devon J.
are some of these
Thomas.
guys more dinged up than we think they are? I mean, I'm trying to think if possible, because last week, at least, in the second half, they were starting to get more pressure on Garrett Green whenever he actually did try to throw the ball. But I don't know. It just felt like we had to, Tom Allen had to, bring the blitz with his safeties or something in order to get pressure this week.
Yeah, no sacks for Penn State. I know that sacks versus pressure is 2 different categories, but I would imagine that whenever those the pressure stats come out when PFF does it, that's not going to be very high, because it certainly felt like when Penn State did not blitz, they were putting very little to no pressure on Bezek, which is just annoying given, like I said, the talent on the defensive line and what we all thought that they could be, and what I mean, my Abdul Carter 16 sacks. Still not looking great. We're still at 0. So,
I
think
mean,
I think long
you think
term,
we should move back to linebacker, or do you think he just needs a little more time at D line, or do you think they pull the plug on this experiment at some point?
probably not, just because the end isn't exactly in the great. I mean, not that linebacker is either, but defensive end depth wise, I think you feel good about those first 4. You don't want to go beyond that. Yeah, it's just, man, just an unsatisfying win, and pretty crazy. They did only allow 3 points in the second half. I'm trying to look up the yardage. I believe they allowed around 90 yards in the second half. So you just hope that is what the Penn State defense actually is, what they showed in the second half. But it didn't feel great. The box score for me, by the way, just as a heads up, is not working on ESPN. It's only showing defensive, but Harold Fannin Jr. I know he had like 11 catches for like 120 yards, and man, like we were saying in the pregame show, that it's a Big Ten tight end or an SEC tight end or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it's not showing for me now either.
He was so good, and if I have to pick something else that was maybe concerning, it's knowing that he is who Bowling Green wants to get into, right? Who they want the ball to, where they want the ball to be is in his hands. And Penn State did not do a good job of not allowing that. It's the same thing with like Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, where Penn State's entire game plan should have been just do not let this guy beat you, and you basically did. And certainly that was another takeaway today that's just a little concerning, especially with Bowling Green's running back Terrion Stewart being out, who was another guy that we talked about and said could be really dangerous. To allow Fannin to get the ball that many times and to basically be out schemed by Bowling Green is a little concerning for Tom Allen, somebody that I was not quite as high on the hire as some other people. But Tim, let's talk about Drew because we talked about. I feel like it's almost like Groundhog Day, where last year against West Virginia looks great. We come on here, we're over the moon, and then you start to see some of the cracks. Certainly not a bad game from Drew whatsoever, but had that interception, didn't look quite as clean and crisp in the second half. What are your takeaways from Drew coming out of this game?
Well, I still think he's much better than he was a year ago. Even if he didn't look quite as sharp in this game. And I mean, and still, like, his stat line overall, still pretty decent. 13-20, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, he threw an interception his first year. But you know what? Now he's taking more shots downfield. That is going to happen sometimes. It sucks that it happened at the worst possible time when you're up 3. It's fourth quarter. You're trying to just make a 1-score game a 2-score game, and then really just dial up the pressure on Bowling Green. And I think if they had scored on that, they had finished that drive in the end zone. I have no doubt the defense comes out, holds them in check, and then they get possession again, and then score a back-breaking touchdown. And it's a more comfortable win in the end. And maybe we're not quite patching the performance today as we are right now, but otherwise, he's still overall. He still looked a lot more decisive. Took some more shots downfield. That's what you want to see. That's the important takeaway. I think he didn't return to the timid Drew Hour that we had last year, who was just constantly hitting his check downs. Wasn't really taking any shots deep, and I think we kind of have our answer though as to why, even despite that pass game still struggles, because receiving core is just not that good. Maybe you're good for a couple deep balls, but consistency wise, they're just lacking it right now.
Yeah, that's certainly when we talk about big picture stuff coming off of last week. Obviously, Trey Wallace was one of those guys where we were like, oh, he might be a bona fide wide receiver 1. And I still lean towards the real Trey Wallace is probably closer to the West Virginia game than he is to the Bowling Green game, where he didn't have any.
I have to wonder if Bowling Green was just focused on keeping him in check.
Yeah, and that could certainly be the case, but that, again, what we talk about coming out of this game, like you said, wide receivers just not fully there. But no, I think one of the things I noticed with Drew in this game in particular, and now that I think back to other games, when he's pushing the ball vertically down the field, he's much more accurate and on target. It's when he has to throw horizontally on like crosses and stuff like that, it feels like he sometimes throws behind the receiver or overthrows them. I feel like, look at like all those Warren plays, a lot of them were, right up the seam or right along the sideline where he's pushing it more vertically. So again, just a small thing to point out with Drew, but yes, he's definitely better than last season, and I still believe in Drew and think when you look at takeaways from this game, what are the most worrisome things? I wouldn't say Drew is super high up there, but you would have at least hoped in the second half that he's able to hit Trey Wallace there. Even though Omari Evans, I don't really blame him for that. That was a crazy throw. That was almost like a punt. He threw it so high and still was able to hit Omari Evans from that far away. But yeah, just if last week was an A+ for Drew, this week feels like a B+. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, B+ is fair. Obviously,
I know you're going to be doing
a bad pick in the end zone. There was I'm already revealing some of my position grades here. Although I have to think about some of the other units, but yeah, I think quarterback would probably be a B+ because overall, still a good game for Drew. He did a couple not just the interception, but the big sack he took where he kind of escaped or evaded a tackle a couple times, but at a certain point, like, he just needed to throw the ball away. Like, it was clear nobody was open. Just throw it away. Don't take that sack. So I think that was another bad decision from him there. But otherwise, I think he looked pretty good. He made smart decisions, and he still took some shots downfield, which again, different from last year's Drew. So not panicked at all about him. And then the running backs, they look probably the best part of this offense besides, Tyler Warren. I think, thank goodness for Tyler Warren. I don't know where our passing game would be otherwise, but, Nick and Katron were, they were solid again. And especially when they needed to be, you saw Singleton rip off that 41-yarder to finally put some distance between Penn State and Bowling Green, late in the game. And Katron had some good runs to move the chains too. I think his longest was a 26-yarder. So
Yeah.
then, they both went over 100 yards. So I mean, I'd probably give this unit, no worse than like an A minus. I mean, frankly, I don't know how you give them anything but an A, if you ask me.
I mean, all in all, it's an ideal what you kind of expect out of those guys. Where Katron was, really good at picking up, 6 yards a pop, consistently getting yardage, and Singleton was, he hit some home runs for you, and like we mentioned before, the one that kind of wouldn't say solidified the win, but certainly gave Penn State some breathing room and let me know that I most likely was not going to have to eat poo, which was nice. I feel like Singleton definitely back after last season. Like it's good to see him have 2 back-to-back games where he showed that explosiveness, 114 yards against West Virginia, 119 yards against Bowling Green, and he's going to be averaging like 8 yards a carry or something like that whenever the stats get updated. Bye week weirdly coming at a good time for Penn State. Kevin Winston goes down with an injury in the first quarter, and they took his helmet away. He was still in his pads, so I wonder if it was a
precautionary thing.
Yeah, and usually when you see the helmet taken away, it can usually just be a concussion. So Franklin would not comment on the status of KJ Winston. That is what Zach Sako said, the Locked On Nittany Lions host. I'm just reading his tweet. Franklin would not comment on KJ Winston. So Andrew Rappelier also was apparently, he was out, and he was apparently on crutches. So Penn State does get a bye week here, which is, I wouldn't say Penn State's like beat up per se. It's just a couple injuries here or there. But after a game like that, I need a bye week. I don't know about the rest of the team, but I need a bye week. Man, this is not what I was expecting to talk about.
You and I both, buddy. But look, I mean, I'll say I know we've been crapping on a bit, but look, at the end of the day, they got the win. That's better than a loss.
Yes.
They're 2-0. They still have all their hopes and dreams in front of them. Like I say, if you want to talk, do you want to talk a little bit about what lies ahead? Since you got a bye week coming up, and then Penn State after that, which hopefully should be the comfortable win over a MAC team that we thought today was going to be. But my biggest concern, I'll say, watching that defense get shredded early on was, Lincoln Riley of all people has got to be licking his chops when he watches that game film. Because him and Ryan Day are both going to be licking their chops. I mean, those are, any team with an explosive passing attack is going to have some fun on this Penn State defense, I'd say. Fortunately, those are the only 2 teams just at first glance that seem capable of doing that against Penn State. Like, I don't know, Illinois is not exact. Prep Illinois teams aren't known exactly for slinging it across the yard, and UCLA just looks. I don't know if you watched their game at all last week against Hawaii, but they just look terrible. I think Bowling Green beats them by a couple touchdowns, if you ask me. USC, I don't know, Wisconsin. Jury's out on them. They seem more like I know they want to be like more of a spread team and throw it around, but they seem more suited to run the ball, but they don't seem like their passing attack is quite as explosive. But Washington, who knows? I guess we got to see more of them. They might be a team that could potentially. We don't know what it'll be like in November, but Will Rogers does have over 12,000 career yards passing. So
I was going to say that's so far at this point for both Penn State and, like we have mentioned with Washington, the team that.
I mean, it's probably
fully new.
It's probably a fruitless exercise to look this far ahead and say, "Oh, this team's going to light them up." But I mean, I'm confident USC and Ohio State are, going to pose problems for the secondary. I'll say.
Yeah, but that is the beauty of kind of what we talked about the West Virginia game. That game heading into the season was such a focus for Penn State, and knowing that if you get that win, that you then have an easier stretch of Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, UCLA, and to put it in perspective somewhat, I think it is human nature for, as much as, Franklin can hammer the 1-0 this week and Bowling Green, Bowling Green, Bowling Green. Like, it's human nature to get a big win like that against West Virginia on the road and see the schedule that you have ahead and kind of have a letdown, which I think this definitely is. Bowling Green deserves a lot of credit. I think that they're clearly a good, solid MAC team, but this certainly feels like a letdown for Penn State. And maybe Penn State's not as good as what we thought coming out of West Virginia, and they still have, things to iron out. But I certainly don't think that they're as bad as, I don't think they're as bad as what they showed today. And it's like anything else, it's probably
well, the old quote from Joe Paterno, Pat. Never as good as you think you are after a win, or never as bad as you think you are after a loss, or in this case, win that was a hell of a lot closer than it should have been. So
wasn't Paterno also, you learn more about the second, you learn more about your team in the second game of the season, the first game of the season? Didn't he have something like that?
I think so. I think you might be right. I have to look it up, but
something along those lines. But
that's also true. It's easy to have hot takes after week one. And frankly, I think we kind of feel like Oregon fans did last week. You remember when they, barely got past FCS Idaho?
We likely deserve this, or at least I do. I don't want to speak for you, Tim, but I freaking wrote an article about how I want the 5 seed in the playoff, and now I still want the 5 seed, but maybe this was again needed as a reminder that this Penn State team is still a work in progress. They are not, Georgia or Ohio State were locked in. So.
Again, I think we remember what we were saying. Like, I'm sure we said at the beginning, like preseason, but it's not like Andy Kołnicki's necessarily going to hit the ground. Right, like everything's going to be on point and clicking first game. Now, it went a lot better than we thought it would first game, and maybe we got a little excited. And it's not like today was bad either. They were pretty good overall, but there's still some things to work out there. And obviously, I don't know. Hopefully, maybe we can find a way to scheme some more receivers open, and hopefully get some more receivers involved in the passing attack instead of just relying totally on Tyler Warren to carry the day. But
I will say, weirdly, and this is kind of a forgotten about game in Penn State lore, but in 2022, Penn State goes on the road to Auburn. They win 41-12. The next week, they come back, they play MAC team Central Michigan, and they end up winning 33-14, but it was 21-14 Penn State in the lead going into halftime. So similar-ish game. Obviously, Bowling Green proved to be a greater threat, and I remember that Central Michigan game. I was at the game. I was never greatly concerned that Penn State was going to lose, like I was today, because I might have sprinkled a little money on Bowling Green money line at halftime because it was plus 750. So that is money down the drain, but emotional hedge, money well spent, guaranteed the Penn State win. I just, it was one of those things of, this was the first Penn State season. Well, I shouldn't say the first, but I was just so in on Penn State last year, and I was, more down on them this year going into the season, and thought maybe that, I was almost too down. And you see how they play against West Virginia, and you think, all right, maybe I'm just being a hater. And it turns out that it can never just be easy. You're not going to be 2019 LSU and just out of the gates, look like an elite team. So some work to be done. Any other final thoughts on Bowling Green?
I wanted to add 2016 team. The first month, with Joe Moorhead. I mean, they didn't look so crisp. I mean, they had some, you had some glimpses of the explosiveness and what could be, but it wasn't really till I think after the Minnesota win that they really started to, look like the offensive machine that they became. So, I think this Kołnicki's offense is further along than Moorhead's was this time. And it helps when you have, the personnel that Kołnicki and Harry. He's got a much better O-line by comparison and a better quarterback. So that helps.
I would for sure say that the more concerning thing between the offense and defense is the defense. So I agree with
Definitely,
you on
the
that.
defense was the more concerning. The offense, yeah, there's it's not perfect. There's definitely some issues. But I mean, wide receivers mainly, but definitely some things that can be cleaned up there too. But the defense is what really scares me. I think the offense, they can put up enough points on most of these teams, maybe all but like two of them, they could probably beat in shootouts if it came down to it. But there's two on that schedule I'm looking at that they're going to have to shore up that defense if they want to get by them.
It is just such a change from, I know what you grew up with and what I grew up with, where for the longest time, you could count on Penn State's defense and it was the offense that we would be worried about. And it's almost like a change of mindset, both for fan and team, perhaps, that even for Penn State's offense, you can't tell me that Little Nicky and Drew and the rest of the team came into this thinking that they would need to score 34 points. Of course, they wanted to score 34 points, and they were likely to, but that they would need to score 34 points to win this game. That the defense wouldn't hold its own, and they did in the second half. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, they're closer to that second half defense in the first half. But tough goings, Tim. Tough goings. You give a shout out to the offensive line. I want to give a shout out as well. Did really well. We saw more of a rotation. I know Cooper Cousins got some more play. Nolan Rucci got some more play, both at left tackle and right tackle. He was in at left tackle. I don't have the full snaps, but in at left tackle a lot in the fourth quarter, it felt like. So Penn State going to Rucci down the stretch in favor of Sheldon was a little surprising, considering last week it seemed like they were well set on those starting five. So,
well, it's good they're getting some rotation in there.
Yeah.
Got to get as many capable bodies as possible because obviously injuries are going to happen. People will get dinged up. So it's good that they got some other people off the bench and they were able to hold their own. So good sign there. But yeah, just look, bottom line. Yeah, this sucked in a sense. It was a lot closer than it should have been. Defense looked alarmingly bad for a half before getting it together. But again, end of the day, a win's a win. So, all the team's goals are still ahead of them. That's the important thing. We got a bye week coming up, so there's time for people to get better. And then you come out facing Kent State, who I think we would safely say is a worse team than Bowling Green. I mean, Bowling Green, it wouldn't surprise me if they win the MAC or at least, challenge for a MAC title.
Kent State is down 20-7 against St. Francis in the second quarter.
That tells you all you need to know. I don't think St. Francis is exactly an FCS powerhouse of a team. So that should, fingers crossed, be the comfortable sacrifice that we were hoping today would be. So I'll just say, I hope Texas A&M's taking this team a little more seriously after today.
Is that who Bowling Green has next? Texas A&M?
Yeah, they're going to A&M next week. So
that will be interesting to watch, especially if they get Terrion Stewart back. I will be interested to see what this team looks like. But
I might keep an eye on that one next week too. So that's since Penn State doesn't play. So
thankfully, I need a bye week.
Yeah, seriously. I didn't think I'd be saying this after the second game, but I'm glad that bye week is there. I need a break from this.
It is funny that love college football, and you take me back to like July 10th. I'm like, man, I can't wait for Penn State football to be back. And then you had to experience something like that for 3 hours, which was not fun. I mean, you said you had to take a walk at one point. My shirt was off. I put it back on for the pod because honestly, they didn't deserve shirtless Pat. But yeah, just happy they survived, I suppose. I would be somewhat glass half full. We'll talk more about. We'll wrap up here. We're going on 40 minutes. We'll talk more about the rest of the Big Ten as we get into our Wednesday show. But Michigan loses to Texas 31-12. So right on the money with that. Just saying for Tim and I, we both said that -7.5 seemed a little weird. So yeah, wasn't exactly sure why Michigan. I mean, I know good defense, but not too much happening as far as notable games notable games countrywide.
I mean, Texas.
But
I don't know if you meant. I don't know if I heard. I don't know if I heard you mention Texas, Michigan, just now.
yeah,
But
just what I talked about.
okay, yeah, wasn't quite.
No worries. Nah, I got you.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap up here. Tim needs another walk. I need cigarettes, multiple.
Yeah.
Penn State somehow survives. Thank God they do. I don't know if I would have been able to do this if they had lost, and I would have had to eat poo. So.
I was thinking of what my rant was going to be if they did lose this one. So I'm glad I didn't have to think up something for that.
So am I.
Again,
want to know this week.
So
we celebrate the wins in the program. We'll get back to the tape, figure out what we did wrong, and got a bye week. So Tim and I will not be on this Wednesday just because of the bye week. We don't have anything to preview, and we'll take the week off with Penn State as well. So we will be back 2 Wednesdays from now. Yeah, the following Wednesday to preview Kent State, which will hopefully be much nicer than this game because I will be at the game. And I will tell you this much. If it is a 7-point win for Penn State, I might not make it back to the podcast or YouTube show. I guess it's not a podcast. You get the idea.
Maybe he'll check in shirtless from Beaver Stadium.
We'll see. We'll see. Yes. All right. Any final thoughts, Tim?
No, like I said, 1-0 this week. A win's a win. Just, we're not the coaching staff, so we can just kind of discard this one and just go enjoy our bye week. The players and the staff, meanwhile, they'll definitely be looking at all that went wrong and what went right and how to, clean things up going forward. So long season ahead, guys. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So let's, just like how we got, maybe this how we got a little, maybe I don't know if I said this, but instead like saying how we're going to go in the natty after last week, let's not doom and gloom and say we're going to go 7-5 or whatever some of you might be thinking after this long season ahead.
There will be bumps on the journey, and today was certainly a bump, but one that Penn State was able to survive. So Penn State is 2-0 on the season, 1-0 this week, survives Bowling Green. Make sure you're reading blackshoediaries.com. We'll have tons of stuff, obviously. Follow us on Twitter, BSD Tweet. You can see my handle and Tim's handle if you want to follow us as well. You can follow me, see if I make another poop tweet for Kent State. I don't know if I should. Playing with fire there. But thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in a couple weeks.